Are you ready? Hello, and welcome to the Season 10/X MLTP draft for the auction round of the draft.
They would just stick with 10.
Has there been a consensus yet? Is it 10 or X?
You through this draft as soon as it starts.
Go! That should be very exciting.
And if you hear this noise in the background, that is just them testing the software.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a Tag Pro event, so it'll probably be roughly 45 minutes to an hour from now.
Do we know if they've tested it before today, or?
It's definitely been tested before today. It's not like last season.
Okay, good.
Testing
Okay,
it for
good.
the first time 15 minutes before the draft.
Because I remember Jim asked me last season, or she asked me after this season, like, what's the one thing you change about the whole drafting thing? And I was like, the system's great. Just test it before the day of, because that was just a total shit show. But, thankfully they're on top of it this season. So
Yeah, we were testing it last night. There were a few bugs, but hopefully we won't need to call new comp in the middle of the night.
Should we
That
talk
noise?
about-
That was Base Gods winning Tonto for 100 coins.
It's a steal.
Let's get some steals in the chat.
Should we talk about the nomination order?
Yeah, I guess that's official now.
Was this randomly determined, or?
I guess so.
Yeah, I believe for the first time they did release the nomination order to the captains before the draft started, which they haven't done in the past auctions.
Yeah, so
So is that what we're looking at right now?
yeah, the nomination order. So first off will be Origin Ducks, followed by Meme Team, Spikeology, Base Gods, Ball Comedies, Campers Delight, Pup and Suds, which is Stan's team's name if you didn't know. Then Boost and Dynamo, Ball Teasers, Angry Balls, Texas Hold'em, Chase Jam, Holy Rollers, Probots, Holding Gate, and Tears.
So like Dino said in a message earlier, like I'm also really looking forward to this from like an impartial perspective, because obviously, K-Pow, you've done this a bunch. Dino, you have too. You go into the draft and it's like you've got this strategy and you know what you want to do, but everybody's kind of doing different things. So in terms of nomination order, K-Pow, what's kind of like your take? How do you use that to your advantage?
I think I failed miserably last season with one of my nominations, where I nominated a player from Centra that wasn't entirely going to be active. But typically, what I generally try to find somebody in the same conference as me that I know that I'm not particularly interested in, but that I know is going to create a big bidding war to try and drive as few coins or as many coins as I can out of the other team's hands, and then have a better idea of what's remaining.
Yeah, no, that sounds like something that that's kind of where we always tried to come from as a team. I definitely agree with you there. You want to get as many tag coins spent on players you aren't interested in, right? Like that's the goal.
Yeah, I feel like in the past though there were alternate strategies when you had that extra spot or extra 2 spots available, because sometimes if you really wanted to, you can use an early nomination for one of your minors players that you want for really cheap. And at that point, no one's really thinking about going for minors players, so you're more likely to get them. While now, every single pick is going to be a majors player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's that's good and bad from 2 perspectives, right? So everybody else is probably going to have it's going to be a much more unified strategy from top to bottom. But then on the downside, well, I guess that is the downside, is that everybody's doing the same thing. But on the upside, it's a much more kind of focused draft. Everybody's got the same goal. They're trying to maximize those 3 spots, right?
Yeah. There's much less room for error, so I think you'll see a lot less captains trying to beat each other up because they can't really afford to waste a spot on someone they don't want.
So, Dino, jumping back to your comment earlier about kind of the snipe pick early on, nominating the minors player that maybe not a lot of people wanted. Do you have an example of where that really worked out? Because for me, the one that kind of jumps to mind is Grief Seeds drafting Ledge last season, and I think that was more of kind of a friend pick that he may or may not have wanted to undo. But what was your kind of take on what's another example of one that I might not be remembering of where that was a really beneficial situation?
I'm trying to think.
Last year, Curry going for Big Bird.
Yeah,
Spiller also got Blue Monday very early in the draft for fairly cheap, and I think Blue Monday kind of split between majors and minors there. But that was a guy that he got for cheap, and it was towards the start of the draft where everybody's sort of hesitant or reticent to kind of spend any big coins on somebody that's not an established star, right?
See, Spiller tried that, but I think it kind of backfired on him because I feel like he could have gotten Blue Monday / MC Ride / whatever his new name is, a lot cheaper if he took him later, because he was pretty much pegged into kind of a minor's role. And at the beginning of the draft, when everyone had coins, the few people that actually did know who he was and wanted him, they're like, oh, why not? I'll throw a few coins at him, see if I can get him for really cheap. So Spiller actually ended up paying a good amount. So we're not going to see any of that this draft unless he actually wanted him for majors.
Yeah, I think in the early goings, captains have a tendency to potentially be a lot more combative, honestly, in the sense that they see somebody going for cheap. Oh, okay, well, I can't let him get that cheap. So then you kind of see some weird picks at the start where maybe captains end up with players they weren't necessarily wanting to get. Whereas later on in the draft, I think that everybody kind of has their guy in mind, right? Their minor star, their under, hyped guy that they want to get for 0 or 1 tag coins. And so no one's ever really willing to go out with their last spot and kind of fight over somebody that they don't really really want. But
I think what you're going to see this draft is there's going to be a lot of people calling steal when they see someone go for cheap, but there's really going to be either players that one guy really wants and they end up getting him for cheaper because no one else is really going to want to bid him up or invest a significant amount, or you're going to see players that like 2 or 3 people really want and they're going to go for a lot more. It's really all about how many people left want you and how many people have the coins actually going on you.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the East, working through the big board on that, one thing that really, really jumped out to me, and we always say that like, oh, there's no good players in this draft, XYZ, all that kind of stuff. But this season, it really jumped off the page in the sense that, if you were to compare the 10th best defender on the board, you've probably got somebody who's played majors, they've seen significant success. At least in terms of the Eastern Conference, whereas, on the offense side, you get down to number 10, and that's a player that has no, majors experience like at all, maybe some fill-in duty. So, wait, is this the start?
No.
Oh, Comedies? Okay.
I hope not.
But at any rate, there's all these great defenders. Obviously you have grief seeds that I think everyone's going to put number 1. But I mean, after that, you've got, Turbo, Jim, going down the list. You've got guys like Prism who have a lot of experience. And you don't see that same experience on the offensive side. How do you guys think that's going to influence at least the eastern side of the draft?
Well, Mr. Hat's definitely going to go for a lot more than 1 coin this time around. Needless to say.
Bottom Lie is probably going to go for a lot too.
No, I would agree with that. Ball Don't Lie's, easily one of the top 10 offenders available in this draft.
And I think you're also going to see a lot of the like central offenders go to the East instead of the West. Like I could even see Eastern teams going in on like Milkstaker, D-Wiz, or Espeluznante, just because there's such a lack of experience.
Oh yeah,
a real role reversal considering traditionally it's been the West sort of poaching guys from the East because the East has traditionally had a much wider player berth.
Yeah, it's interesting this season because there's only 3 defensive captains in the East, assuming high and legman play O, so there will be slightly less of a demand for the higher end O, but yeah, I agree there's very low supply, so there could easily be some overbids.
Talking with Legman, I know that he wants to play defense. That's kind of where he went in on that. However, he's capable of doing both, and I think that they've kind of talked it over, and it gives them a big advantage in the sense that they can really make this draft about value as opposed to about a position. But I think if Legman had the choice, I think he'd rather play defense again.
Agreed. Although I'd also throw I'm high in that situation too, where he has the flexibility. If in theory he got 2 quality offensive players, he could slide back to D as well.
Yeah, maybe he's done his homework. I just don't know that there are 2 offensive players that I'd be willing to, go all in on in this.
All right, Nick Remioga.
I guess I'm just excited really for every team basically, but really to see the Milksteak and TPR battles, just to see the difference between Origin captains and Eastern captains and see how much they want them, and then how kind of it'll shake out. I mean, Centra kind of has its own little bubble of who they're going after, just because they can't play Origin as well. But it'll be interesting to see which Eastern players or Origin players are going to opposite conferences.
Yeah, I think we definitely saw that last season where kind of East and Origin was more together than ever before, just with the players that went on both sides. Wait, that can't be the start, is it?
No, that's Capper's Delight nominating.
What?
Yeah, no, Fly said they're still doing
okay.
tests. We're up to, yeah.
They'll tell us. Okay, I think I figured it out at this point. As goes for 100 to the Holy Rollers.
So speaking of going for 100, I think that it'll be kind of the hot button topic here as soon as Grief Seeds gets nominated.
Yeah, if people really think he's gonna go for 100, will they be willing to go for 100 before anyone even gets close to there?
No, exactly.
Origin Ducks have the first nomination, and I think a lot of people thought, okay, that might go for him. So it is possible that we could see just 100 nomination off the bat.
That would be
interesting.
It would be interesting. I mean, do that if you really had your mind set.
I mean, you can even have your heart set on him, but I think the reason why that strategy paid off really well, and I don't want to say everything was, trading the minors picks to get the tag coins, because at the end of the day, that was only like,
God.
no, I'm not saying that was it. Like, I'm not. I know that that's the common sentiment, but I really don't. I think the reason why that was so successful is just because, Dino on the offensive side, top 1, 2, 3 player in the East, wherever you want to slot it, Grief on the same thing. And so you've got literally the best of the league on each side. And K-Pow and Checkmate were very good at the same token. But I don't think that if I don't think you can go all in on that strategy if you're not at that level necessarily. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would never. I didn't think I would go up to 100. We had both talked about it, and we thought.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But yeah, besides grease suits, who do you really think is going to get up to those higher levels, especially this season when there's only 3 picks and everyone's going to be willing to spend a lot more tag
Mhm.
coins?
I think TPR right off the bat is a guy that's going to go for a lot of coins. I don't think he's going to go for 100, but he'll be in excess of 80. I'm quite certain of that.
See, I was going to set the over under on 80. So let's say 80.5 to be accurate. So K-Pal, you're taking the over there, or
I'm going to take the over on 80, 80.5. Give me the over. Maybe not much over, but I think he's going over 80.
yeah, I think that'll be pretty close. I know in a thread earlier I said 70 or 75. If he went for less than that, he'd be a really good steal. Again, just because I think that I know that Legman disagrees with me about this because we've had the conversation, but I think the league rotates around really dominant offense, and that a dominant offense will benefit a team better than a dominant defense. And so I think that you'll see these guys that, like, if they go for less than 65, 70, that it's actually like, that's a really, really solid deal. And the captains that aren't afraid to spend those tag coins in the right situation are going to find themselves, really, really ahead of the curve.
Besides those two, anyone else going to get up to those levels?
I think the next closest will probably be Milk. I don't think he'll be on the same level as TPR, probably a little less. But in terms of Western offense, I think him and TPR are really the only ones that you can see as like surefire studs. So
no, Slide had a pretty great season.
Slide. I'm very interested to see where Slide goes in the draft.
Yeah, because I feel like all he needs is one person to like really value him.
Well, 2 people.
I guess. I wonder how like. See, the thing I always like watching drafts is watching where former captains bid on their former players.
Oh yeah.
Because I always thought like if their former captain isn't bidding on them or doesn't want them, then there's got to be something wrong with them.
I think if Base Gods had had a long playoff run and Slide was solid throughout, he'd probably be on that same level. But he kind of fizzled out towards the end of the season, so some captains might be a little hesitant to go huge on him.
Well, that would also kind of be interesting if Radius captains aren't as interested, but then I don't know, if earlier elite offense is nominated in the Western Conference and they use 55 to 70 tag coins already and they could get Slide, that could work really well for some captains if they can build a system around it.
On a Western team, you said?
Or on an Origin team, I guess.
Okay.
Not Centra, no.
So to kind of tie the last 2 points together about players that are going to go for a large amount and captains bidding on former players, I'm going to kind of take it out of left field, and I think that Intercest is going to go for quite a bit. I'd actually say that he would go for easily over 50. And again, a combination of I think that he really played very, very well this last season in minors, and there's a huge dearth of offensive talent in the East in terms of returning players, and so. If captains are going to have to reach down to minors, Intercest is going to be one of the first names that comes out of the box when they see him. And so, honestly, if his bid went above 65, 60, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised just because of how few offenders there are. And if JJ really wants him, again, I haven't talked to him about that, but I guess that's the obvious That's the easy low-hanging fruit to say. If somebody else wants to bid JJ up on him, that could easily, I think, quickly escalate.
What is the keeper situation for this season? Is it
Same as
still
last season.
5?
It's 10 points, 5. You can only use 5 on a player.
Okay, so JJ would have an advantage of 5 over any
Yeah.
competitor for intercest. Okay.
And I know JJ definitely is interested in intercest, but JJ is not the kind of guy that's going to get super locked in on one player. If he feels that he'd have to overpay significantly for intercest, I don't think he's going to go for him. He definitely has many, many backup plans.
Yeah, but you always come in, I at least personally, always come into drafts with like a team in mind. Like, you think, oh, this will be a successful draft if I get this guy, and this guy. And it's kind of hard to watch that vision slip away. Or at least in my perspective, that's what I've always done.
Yeah, I don't think JJ. I mean, I'm sure JJ definitely has an ideal situation in his mind, but I think he's more open to like finding value in players as opposed to like fitting his ideal image of a team.
Yeah, for me, like I always really shied away from necessarily because I can think about, okay, I think that this team would work really well, but the whole nature of the auction draft is, you only have a finite amount of coins to spend on value that you've got to find. And so if if you're extremely flexible on what your level is, you say, okay, I want to bid 40 on this guy. But then in the heat of the moment, you start bidding 50, 60, 70 on him. That might really put you behind the 8 ball in terms of assembling things. I always came in with like, these are 5 offenders that I want to bid on to be kind of my primary guy. And here's, 10 guys that I might partner with them. And so I've got a group of people I'm looking to do. Obviously, I've got my number 1, my number 2, my number 3 that, I won't necessarily chase anyone else if they're still on the board. But I always had pretty firm numbers in terms of like, I'm willing to bid up to X on this person. And if they're gone, then, I take them off the list and update the numbers to reflect that.
All right, let's change topics here for a second to a pretty hot topic of NPCs. So we have 5 of them this season. You guys want to give your thoughts about who you think made a good pick with their player, especially considering an NPC team won last season?
I think the obvious is Private Major with Legman. I mean, I think with Dino retired, Greasy's kind of having a mixed season last year. I think it's pretty clear that the Super Bowl goes through Legman. And I mean, if you're an NPC, I think that was the number 1 choice of any team. So I think Legman and Private Major is obviously the top tandem on paper.
Yeah, especially with Private Major getting some shit from some Central people, or Spiller making an off comment that Private jumped away from Centra with the potential of having more teams in Centra in order to get that player that he thinks will get him his championship.
So yeah, that is kind of a bit of a hot button topic in terms of, I think that Private's really been pushing this policy, giving people credit for kind of the administrative side of things. And then he's, captaining a team effectively across the country and taking a team away from Centra, hypothetically. So, I mean, how do we feel about this?
I don't think that Centra would have gone. I don't know. I don't think Centra would have gone to 4 teams, especially after last season. The teams didn't really do so well, except for one, which kind of consolidated all the best Centra talent.
We are at 4 Centra teams, though, are we not?
No, it's 3.
I thought Spiller...
Chalky's an orange team.
Yeah, Chalksy
in
was
the Western
Conference.
Oh,
He was a Sphere team, and then he moved. He got moved to Origin. I guess because everyone was saying how bad it would be to be a Sphere team, and he kind of came to his senses or something along those lines and took Mr. Gone.
Yeah, it's pretty much impossible. Just from a competitive standpoint. If we're back in the glory days and we've got guys like Kobe and Dick Licker when he actually wanted to play the game, and a lot of those kind of guys, I think it'd be a little bit more viable. But in terms of kind of the majors players that come from Texas, I mean, you've got All Tiger, who's made a run these past 2 seasons, and then other than that, I mean, it's been a lot of defense, and so there's not really a balanced team you can build there. And then obviously the 3 server thing is it's a huge factor. I think Choxy made the right decision there. I think that was the good play for him.
Yeah, I mean, like Sphere, as we saw with Dalek last season, is basically just not viable. You can get good players on your team, but it's really rare for someone to be able to play at a top level, and all three servers.
Although in Dallas' defense, I mean, he did bring the team, like, they were tied for that final playoff spot with Tears and OK Den's team, but they just missed out. So, I mean, he still put up a competitive season for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's just hard when you lose one of your top players for like a third of your matches.
Yeah, definitely put you at a tremendous disadvantage.
I was gonna bring it back to your question, Dino, but like Legman and All Tiger. Like Legman is obviously probably a little bit of a tier above All Tiger right now, but All Tiger is so elite talent in the Western Conference that he's worth it. Those were both two really smart picks, but I also think Skinny Chode is a really good NPC pick just because he's got so much raw talent in, especially for the Centra division, and that way it frees him up to spend a lot on a player that could build a system around Skinny that would really work. Kind of how like last season, Ibis and Dodds were perfect for him because he has just a very specific style of play, and when that can start paying off, it's amazing, and he can do some crazy moves that people don't typically expect. So he was just a great person to secure for that, just to take him away from other captains, especially too.
Yeah. No, I would agree completely. I think that Skinny's a really big talent, and I think that he's a little salty where he was ranked in the Western Big Board, and for good measure. I mean, he's a very, very, very good player. I don't think that he gets the credit that he really deserves, even in spite of contributing to a very good, Holden Gate squad. I'm sorry that Curry's not playing this season, just because I think he's a solid player, top to bottom. But I think that he and Skinny around kind of the nucleus of that team, I think that's going to be pretty successful. I really like that NPC pick in the West.
Yeah, the only issue is being able to replicate the team around him that he had last season. Because I mean, personally, I think Holden Gate had either the top four or very close to the top four center players all on the same team.
Interesting.
So I really don't think it's going to be possible to put together as strong of a team.
Well, yeah, with Doddsfall captaining, I mean, that card is already taken out of the mix, right? And then if he's going to get Ibis, he's going to have to pay a lot of coins for him. And that's going to seriously hamstring his ability to find another offender of his stature, along with a defensive partner for Ibis. So, yeah, you're right. It'll be really tough to replicate how strong a squad he put together last season.
Well, I was also mostly going to say that getting Skinny allows him, I think it freed him up to be able to go for Cripple, which Cripple is someone that you could build, kind of like Doddsfall last season, that you could build a defense that would support that kind of play, especially for players like Skinny and Mr. Hat, that when they have that kind of defense, they can make plays that no one else can. And I think Cripple could be one of those guys that you could build a defense that would be that good.
Yeah, I slightly kind of forgot about Cripple there, and he's another guy that, like, we were having a discussion about who could go for a lot of coins. TPR and Greasy's first came to mind, but Cripple's another guy that, if there's a couple centric captains that both really want Cripple, like, it's quite conceivable he could hit that 90-ish range or get it past 80 anyhow.
Really? You think the Cripple would go for more than 80?
What did he go for last season?
81.
I mean, he did go for that last season. I don't know. I just, from, again, just kind of my take, it seems like that, I think he was on the upswing, like in terms of perception, not in terms of playing ability. Like Cripple's one of my favorite players to play with, in circles and things like that. But I don't know. I guess he did go for 80 last season. Just from my perspective, I'm always thinking, that offense goes that high just because that's where I've been drafting from. But I guess, one of these top tier offensive captains, or Curry, for example, with Skinny on offense, could, justify paying that much for a really solid defender to lock down a team.
Well, I mean, both Spiller. I mean, he's got All Tiger as his NPC, right?
Oh,
and then Curry and Skinny Joe. In theory, both those teams may be super high on Cripple and opt to, bid him up a lot.
Yeah, I totally forgot about All Tiger because on my screen it's just showing Spiller, and his NPC pick's not there. I don't know what's up with that, but someone's got to call Jim.
Yeah, Choxy's NPC pick is also not on there of Mr. Gunn, but just have to keep those in mind. Back to Donna's original question, I think one of the more surprising NPC picks was Wasatch Pro, just because I think a lot of people forgot about him since he took a season off in Israel. And I think it'll be interesting because of the short turnaround of this season, where we only had like a month-long off-season. So most people are going to be pretty in form already. How quickly Wowsetch can break the rust off and get back into playing shape.
Alright. I really apologize for the delay. Welcome to the show. This happens every season.
Without fail.
So if you have any questions in the chat, make sure to let us know.
I think optimistically they're restarting the auction site so they can reset all the test bids, but who knows?
Oh no, I'm sure that's what it is.
Alright, hi.
Hello.
We have a new link. Your account is the same, but it is going to be this, and then it's auction 2, not auction 1. And we are going to be ready to go in about like a minute.
Alright, say hi to the 250 viewers.
Oh my god, hi guys, I'm all here, best CRC member, thanks.
Auction 2. Alright, and I'll put up the site so our viewers can at least have something to look at. We can talk about the amazing team names that are... There's always a few new team names, and they're always terrible.
Will you just all type in the group when you're ready to go? Like in the auction page?
I can't type.
I don't think we're allowed to type.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Are you guys ready?
Let me make sure the dimensions are set. Just give me a sec. Oh, Jesus Christ. 1 sec.
That's what you'll love to hear, boys.
Okay, so is this a new nomination order?
Yes, the nomination order is different. It was randomized for this.
Oh, okay.
Did you talk about that for a long time?
Not really.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
We just thought that it was set in stone.
No, it's randomized each time.
And I like it because I have the number 1 now.
Okay.
Oh, excellent. See, I always like the later nomination. I would rather nominate 20th in all honesty, but
16.
Are you guys ready?
16th. That's true.
One sec. I just want to make sure it looks good on the stream. Alright, I think it does.
Okay, it'll be like just a minute or so.
Alright,
Scott wants to talk to me.
Let's talk about some stupid team names. So
that's like half the reason why I chose lag prone, because I was like, there's no risk, it's already there, because I guarantee I'd come up with some like fun pun. I mean, my one attempt at that was like Bela Flag and the Flag Tones, and that was like unanimously hated in spite of being an excellent reference. But yeah, it's I'm very disappointed in LeBron, to be honest, but I guess it's expected. But some of these other ones,
I think meme team is fine. Ball teasers, which is a Canadian chocolate bar. If you're...
Hey, they're delicious. They're chocolate balls. It's not a bar. It comes in a package, and they're little balls. I believe it's English actually, but we have them in Canada too.
I've never seen one.
Puppet Suds would probably fall into that category too. I don't know. I like Fatal's name, like Spikeology.
Yeah,
I think there's some really cool. Like I'm majoring in Spikeology.
Yeah,
I think that's really solid.
This is fine. It's
Chase
classy.
Jam. I think
Chase Jam
Chase Jam's great. Okay, so I guess I was just against Puppet Suds and ball teasers.
Yeah, so let's just shit on I'm High and Stan,
Yeah.
and maybe Stalin's influence on them this past
movie was
season. We'll blame it on
Puppet Suds
Stalin.
Brink, the Disney Channel original movie.
Of course.
Also, shout out to Choxy for still using Ball Comedies, which I think is still a terrible name.
And PM bringing back Holy Rollers.
Ball Rollers is a decent name.
Yeah, that's a solid name.
Yeah, that was a solid.
And
name.
Side bringing back the Probots.
Shortening it to
That's
Probots
fine.
was the best thing he could have done for it.
Mm-hmm.
Holy Rollers was from an era of MLTP where almost every single team name was religious.
Flag
Back then
Gets.
we had the Holy Rollers, the Co-Sinners, and the Amper Saints. And I bust in season 2 with the flag.
I would be embarrassed to admit how long I was in the Tag Pro community before I finally got that name.
Well, to be fair, it had an O to start with, but then we changed it to more PC.
More PC.
Alright, what is this this? I'm trying to find this freaking Brink reference.
So, any thoughts on who Raven is likely to nominate with the first pick?
Ooh, interesting.
Oh yeah, I can change now if you want to see the full order, and I'll scroll.
I would be surprised if he put up Grief, because I don't think he's going to want to draft him, and he might just want to make people
Oh, yeah, there you
quick.
go.
And
Oh,
Grief
there it
has
is.
been
Oh,
named
my.
Oh,
Meme Team with
LeBron.
100.
Wow.
Holy
Wow.
The trigger
fucking
finger.
shit.
The trigger
oh
finger.
my god.
Wow.
LeBron
So,
That's a scary team.
well, I mean,
that's a scary
back
team.
to
No one can do
Bully's
anything
point.
about it. That's
Back to
Out
Bully
of,
Mendiaz's
out of the
point.
offenders in the
Fucking
East right now,
hilarious.
I mean, LeBron, like if Legman plays, then you'd probably put him above LeBron. But I mean, in terms of players at the top of their game right now, right? Like LeBron's probably one of the hottest players in the league. And so
Jesus Christ.
he and Grief seats together. I will be very interested to see who they pair up with because, I think that LeBron, he captained the MLTP team this last season, kind of helped facilitate them on. I think they lost in the Foci 4. I know we might have watched that game, Dino. I can't remember. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see who they end up partnering with.
Yeah, they're gonna have to wait a long time to find out.
Yeah, but I mean, this season in particular, like, the worst player you can take is still, like, a top 40 player, so there's really not that much risk involved.
I think we're going to have to wait a while for the next nomination, because there's probably going to have to be some drama about this pick.
Did someone else try to put
About people not being logged in. Right after LeBron bid, JJ posted in chat, Stan will be right back in 1 second.
Weird.
Not that Stan would have likely put 100 for Grief Seeds, but it's just interesting.
Just
That'd
another
be
day in
funny
Tag
if
Pro
there were
drama.
multiple people trying to put in 100 at the same time. That might be the first time ever that it's actually come down to just speed. And of course, LeBron with the top mechanic.
Well, there was also the speed with myself and Fez there, back for you,
yeah, he
way
would've gone
back
to
in
61 though.
I thought someone would. I really thought someone would go for 100, pretty quickly.
Well, I think that if there's any team in the that can be quantified as a meme team, I mean, now that Grief Seeds is on that team, I mean, it's undisputed champs preseason, number one memers.
So, do we have any guesses on who's going to be left at the end of the draft for LeBron to pick up for 0? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're going to be solid players, just because there's only 36 people being taken. But just like names people might throw out, I think. I was thinking LeBron might go for high Miz / Dirds.
Perhaps Mr. Glass. I know.
Yeah, I
Grief
think
Seeds
that's
has
a
always been.
possibility. On the
Mr.
defensive
Glass is
side,
down in Florida.
Break and Bolarity.
Polarity would be interesting. That would definitely be. Polarity and Grief would either be an amazing defense or like a meme mess.
Paul McCartney's another guy. He's down in Virginia, and I think he could slide in well alongside Grief.
I feel like LeBron's he wants a team with a good personality and like people that will try as hard as he will. So I feel like he's gonna draft people that he knows. But we'll see. Alright, so who's next? Probots. I wonder if Side is gonna be like Raven, just like nominate a high priority player and just sit back and watch the world burn.
And TPR with the second nomination.
Or Mr. Hat. I think a lot of people expect Mr. Hat to go for a pretty significant amount.
Yeah.
You gotta think Side would probably have some interest in Mr. Hat.
It's possible.
Being as a defender in the East there, I would imagine Mr. Hat would probably be fairly high on this list.
Sinatra is on the board.
Alright. Young Sinatra. It looks like, and with the bid
If
of
Sinatra
11,
goes
it
for
looks like
11,
Side
this
actually
will-
wants it.
I think that kind of threw
Be a
everybody
steal.
for a loop a bit.
Yeah, I think everyone was expecting a big name.
So Young Sinatra kind of broke out last season, but he wants to go back to D this season, so...
Which is his traditional position, and he may well
And
be
for-
a more valuable player there.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And for backstory, before the season, LeBron really wanted to get Sinatra. I really wanted to get Turbo. We ended up with both of them for a combined, I think, 7 tag coins. And going into the season, we were more than comfortable playing Sinatra on defense. It turned out that he needed to play O. But I think that, he's definitely a guy he has the potential to be one of the top defenders in MLTP from a technical standpoint overall.
And it looks like a 3-horse race here with Origin Ducks, Probots, and Vault Teasers.
And I mean, Side's in it all the way up to 30, so he wasn't just nominating somebody that he didn't want. He was nominating somebody that he was very much interested in.
Yeah, and with one more bid, Young Sinatra will officially be an above-average MLTP player. With considering there'll be an average.
And I think that it's interesting, how one defender. I think it's interesting how certain defensive players play better against certain offenders, et cetera, et cetera. And some people might think someone's a very good player where others really don't. I know that I'm high in terms of players that he does not want to play against. He does not want to play against Young Sinatra on defense. He really, really thinks that Sinatra is a very, very, very good player, and I agree with him. But so, in all honesty, I will be surprised if I'm high gets outbid here. He's probably got a number potentially in the 50s or 60s for somebody that he wants on his team.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised.
Okay, then
There it
saying
is,
he's out.
37. See, that's
Oh,
a great
wow.
price.
That's a great price.
I mean, I think it's a good price. I don't think that's the biggest. That's probably not gonna be the biggest steal of the draft, but it's a pretty
huge
solid
steal. Let's get some exclamation point steals in the chat.
I think it's a nice pick by MI to get a solid defender.
I know that Sinatra and High are probably both
And
really
Mr.
stoked
Hat.
to be playing together. Oh, there's Hat.
And
I think this is a PM.
Legman, PM bid?
I don't think they actually want him. I think this is just a let's get some money out of the other Eastern captains first.
And here's where we're going to see how high the defensive captains really bid, Mr. Hat, being the, he's coming off a Super Bowl win, one of the only offenders in the East with majors experience. And, right now we're seeing Stan, Sidewalk, Dodds Fall, these guys in the East really bidding him up, trying to, get that value. So how much, Dino, K-Pow, how much would you bid on Mr. Hat this season?
I would bid at least 50 on him. 32 is absolutely insane at this point.
It really slowed down there.
I don't understand why this is so slow right now. Perhaps people are under a mistaken assumption that it's just Checkmate 2.0. But yeah, Mr. Hat is a terrific talent. If he goes for under 40 here, this is insane.
I think
there's an aspect of mind games that comes into this, at least from my perspective. I know that whenever I was in a duel with another captain, I would always wait until 3 seconds. Like I had a number that's 20 points above where the current bid is, but I'll wait until the last second and then knock it up and hope that just, gets them frustrated and stressed. Any little bit that, could potentially help them. And so maybe that's what we're seeing, a little bit of slow play here. But
I feel like
wow, is this Side just got
Sidewalk,
41.
Mr. Hat for 41.
Wow, the top player on the Eastern Big Board offensively for 41 coins. That is hard to fathom right now.
Yeah, I guess no one really wanted him. He kind of sticks to his own social circle, so maybe he just, I don't know.
I think a lot of captains were probably hesitant to put a large portion of their money on someone who had succeeded largely on a very successful team, and he hadn't proven himself as a number one option. Obviously, I think I agree with you guys. He's a very talented player, and he'll probably put up very good stats this season, but it's hard to commit to someone who hasn't succeeded on their own per se.
No, I definitely agree.
I think this goes back to my point earlier about how you kind of have a team in mind when you go into the draft, and especially at the beginning, if nobody really had Hat on their ideal team, then they could see him going through and then focusing on the players that they really want, even though he's one of the top talents.
All right, CB13, and I'm really interested in him. He played dynamic for Dyson Majors last season when he got pulled up to Majors. He's tremendously skilled mechanically, an absolute beast mechanically.
Yeah, we figured that out season 8 when he was on our minors team, when we started putting him on D just because he was the best defender on our team just on mechanics alone.
Yeah, I think he probably got 95% of our reset returns playing on offense that season.
Yeah. But yeah, he's just an all-around great mechanical talent, which is crazy considering he played on a fucking projector across his room until halfway through last season.
Doesn't that have like input delay?
I don't know.
Wouldn't that like
He
screw
literally
it?
had a projector. He sat across from the far wall in his basement.
What the
Had the
hell?
game projected on the fucking wall. It was like 8 feet across. It was. He took a picture for us. I couldn't believe it. But I think he stopped doing that, and that like was about the time that he really broke out in majors. Now he's gone for above 40.
Yeah, he's probably gonna go for more than Mr. Hat, which I don't think many people would have anticipated.
No, this is completely opposite what most were anticipating, in the sense that, a lot of these defenders in the East, with so many of them, but I guess the people are valuing CB over, potentially, people with much more majors experience. That's going to be really interesting to see, towards the later rounds.
Well, CB also straddles both conference. Okay, then gets him for 42.
It's a solid pick.
I think it's a very good pick.
Yeah, in terms of mechanically skilled defenders, he's one of the top. And
honestly, I think that you could get somebody. I don't know that I would be willing to spend 42 on CB with so many other defenders left on the board. I think that there's a lot of defensive talent that is out there, and I'm not sure that if I were drafting the CB would be in my top 10.
Yeah, the value over replacement.
I disagree. He's absolutely in my top 10.
Half a Crippy. Okay, that's kind of pretty good.
He's a half a Crippy.
Alright, now we got Half Matt going. Who did pretty well playing majors in his few minutes last season.
Yeah, I think everyone expected him to be one of the better offensive players to go. I've heard that Stan.
Okay, I feel like with these bids, people are still stuck in the mindset from last season of we're drafting 4 people in the auction.
Yeah.
Like, these are very low bids.
Except for Grieve.
But even
except for Grieve, that was
I think it's going to come back to bite a lot of these captains, in the ass potentially, just because, I always went in, not that I was trying to, screw over my minors teams or anything like that, but my priority is to draft a good majors team. And so, if you think that somebody is like a top 5 player in your conference at a position and you're bidding on him, you've got to be willing to go up into like 60s and 70s, because there's going to be a lot of tag coins left over at the end. And so, hypothetically, if you think that Have Matt is a, top 10 player in the East on offense, which I think you can make a very, very strong case that that's, the case. 21 tag coins is, again, these prices are just really low for what I would be looking at.
I think it's telling that the bidding wars between two of his former teammates, that shows like I was saying before, it's kind of, if you get bid up by your former captain or former teammates, that means you actually were a positive influence on the team, or they want to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think with these two, especially considering they both have ties to him, that it's going to end up going pretty high, even if they only draw it out by one-upping each other.
This is Stan and Amhi's first time doing an auction draft, so they might not be as keen on like the psychological tactics of an auction.
They don't know the +3 power move yet.
The +3 power move.
They haven't put that into their arsenal.
What about the +12 power move on RB Bear last season? Knock out Neb and JJ all at once.
I'm high, showing the +2, intimidating Stan. Oh, never mind. I feel like
Stan's not backing down.
Yeah, Stan doesn't care. He's just gonna keep going +1.
I think Stan will go up to at least 50, in my opinion, to get Have Matt.
No, but it looks like it won't matter. He's gonna get him for 36.
I mean, that's slightly above what the average rate of a player is going to go for, and I think Have Matt is going to prove to be a good value at that price. I played against him. I never really played with him on a team, and against him it was in relatively limited times. But I don't know enough about him, honestly, to say that he could be a top 10 guy. He's in the top 10 on the Eastern Big Board. But again, with so little retention in the East, I think you're going to see, a lot of captains maybe have a guy picked from, the middle of minors or the top of minors that they really feel that can contribute. And so you might have, captains that aren't willing to bid on the players at large because they know they're one guy that they want to get, and they're not spending any tag coins on anybody else. I think that's probably what we're seeing here, and why these prices might be a little lower than what we expected.
And you'll notice that we haven't had a Western player nominated yet, so I'm sure every Western captain is just getting anxious. How's Dude McGuy doing, Nick?
Pretty good, actually. I mean, I don't know. It's it's also kind of nice because since so many Eastern players are getting nominated and bid on first, this takes away a lot of the Eastern captains' ability to bid up some of the Western or the Origin specifically players. So it could just come down to a battle of the Origin captains now, if continuing with the trend of Eastern players being nominated.
Yeah.
I think that's true to an extent, but until you see, most of the teams down below that 60 to 70 range where like the top players are going to go. I mean, Private Major Legman, they can still go out and fight. JJ's got 100. Base Gods have 100. Balt, I'm High has 63 points left to spend on a player. 63 points in this draft will buy you like one of the better players. And so I think it's, in terms of the Western teams like feeling confident that Eastern teams can't get any of those Origin players, I think we're a little bit away from that point.
Oh shit!
Steve.
Oh my!
Steve is officially
The
a major
Mr.
player.
Hat.
Congratulations!
The Mr. Hat of season 10.
This is the hype name right here.
Except I anticipate is he
Steve's
gonna go
hype
for
is real.
0? Is he gonna go for 1 like Hat did
I don't
last
think-
year?
I think he. Oh shit! I mean, multiple people have Steve's as a majors player.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
but
I feel
I
like
think-
a lot of
I think
captains
Connor
had the same
definitely-
thought on Hat last
See,
year, and it just
especially-
didn't happen.
But
People were reticent.
But this season, you're not nominating someone if you're not putting them in majors.
That's
Or
true.
You're not
That's
bidding
very
on
true.
Someone if you're not putting him in majors. This is 3 people that would have put him on there, or that would be comfortable.
I know
with him on the
Mr. Hat
roster.
I know Mr. Hat's a big fan of Steve's, so if he's in there with Side, as I imagine he is, I bet he's saying draft Steve's.
When
the Probots got in there at 4.
Yeah, when we were working on the big board on the East, again, I don't know anybody from Novice League, in all honesty. And so I put, I had 4 or 5 guys in there from that league that were, kind of helping me out. And when it came time to kind of put our novice rankings onto, our majors, minors combined, like it was just Steez. That's all that they kept saying. And I don't know if that's part of the echo chamber where one player gets kind of hyped up and then everybody starts hyping him. But, if they had anybody that was going to get drafted in majors, it was going to be Steez.
That's an interesting team. With still 55 left for a defender.
Or
That
an offender in
Yeah,
theory, if
either
High
way.
wants to play defense.
Yeah, he's got a lot of. He could basically get a top tier player to.
With as many top tier defenders left in this draft, goodness, that team's looking salty. If I'm High really feels solid about Steez as a player.
We have our first Western player nominated with
Alright.
Yank.
Yank. I don't really know much about Yank. But
He's super strong.
He's-
He's
very
a definition
strong.
of solid.
Exactly.
Is he? Or he? Oh, he's D.
He's defense.
He's the. I kind of feel
Oh.
like he is just like Big Bird, but with the ability to talk. So I don't know. He's very scary. He's a very good player.
Yeah, I think he's like probably one of the second tier central players, but definitely a very all around good player.
And it looks like Curry was expecting to just pick him up for free.
I mean, they had him. He was ranked 15th on this Western big board. So, I mean, that price point doesn't entirely make sense.
Yeah, I mean, he was on Dalec's team last season, so if Dalek really liked him, I could see him.
I'm
giving
just
him a
excited because I feel like he could be a centerpiece of a defense that would really work well with Skinny Cho, or that could provide Skinny Cho the ability to play in his style. So that's going to be, if Curry can get him and outbid Dalek, that would be awesome. Dalek would be so good with him too. I don't know. I just want him to go to either of these teams, really.
Is Yanka a central player?
Yeah, he's a central player.
He played the central games for Texas Hold'em last season, right?
Along with their
okay,
minors
sure.
games.
Yeah.
He was Ralph Wiggum's partner.
Okay. So
Choxy's already caught on to the
Wow.
two coin power bid.
well, not Choxy. Oh yeah.
No, Choxy called it. Yeah.
No, it looks like he backed off.
Oh, these captains are getting frustrated with how long it's taking. And again, like we dedicated the evening to this, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole deal.
Yeah. Curry's got to be kind of pissed though, because it really
He was
looked
on-
like he was going for 0. He threw in the little smiley face that must have rubbed Dalek the wrong way.
Like I'm saying, I love waiting down below 3 seconds and then just hitting that button again. I remember in season 8, I was bidding against Jim for I'm High, and right around 45 is when I started it, and by 50 she was a little frustrated, and I got I'm High for 55. I'd like to, take credit for that, but
I feel like that's I'm High's preordained price, though. Isn't he always 55
That's true.
points?
That's true. That's so true.
Oh,
Alright,
wow.
going with Dalek.
That's
Okay,
pretty-
so that's Dalek's
That's
pretty
really
defense.
interesting. That's a pretty formidable duo. Just because Dalek he's such a good player to make other players better. I don't know. He's just one of those partners that improves the play of everybody on his team. So for someone like Yank, who could be probably one of the best, if not the best, Centra defender, he has that capability in mechanical skill. So I just think it's going to be an awesome defensive pairing.
To play devil's advocate for a second on Dalek it was the last time that one of his teams made the playoffs. I think that was the Walla Walla Ballas in season 6. Am I?
Yeah, and then Bali Lama couldn't make it, and they lost to Spiller.
Yeah, that was Bali Lama, Dalek, and then Dick Licker, and I think Wrecking Ball.
Yeah.
And so, I know that Dalek's a really fun guy to hang out with. He's had some good teams, and in the meantime, let's see, RB Bear just got nominated. So.
former
Okay,
teammate of mine.
I imagine he's gonna go for a pretty hefty price.
A former teammate of most of the people in this room.
I know
actually.
JJ. I know JJ Poole is big on him. He wanted him last year as his partner.
See,
But,
RB's a great player. He's just
oh, I'm high.
I'm high with a
Went
huge
all
move.
in.
Huge
That's
move.
the play.
55.
That's the play.
Is he
And
not
that's
I
gonna
mean,
the
if that's
prize.
the guy you want,
That
if
is
that's
his
the guy you
prize.
want,
No, that is a great
yeah.
I'm
That's a
telling you,
huge
these
play.
people,
That's-
so many teams are going to have so many tag coins left over, and I'm High just went out and threw his dick on the table, and that's a fucking good team right there.
yeah,
If
RB
Steez
Young
is good.
like half the
Sinatra, that's a
players.
great defense. And if he
Balti's
feels
good.
confident with Steez, that's a really formidable lineup. I like what
If-
I'm High did. That's power play.
If Steez is good,
Well,
he's
I
got to
feel
be
like-
sharp.
Steez is kind of in the mold of LeBron 2 seasons ago, where he's like really aggressive, and On High will kind of sell out to support him.
If Steez is that player that can go and get a grab against most defenses that he plays, because I mean that's LeBron, one of his better strengths is that he can go and get a grab. With I'm High to support, and Young Sinatra and RB on the back end, that team's going to be very, very, very successful, I think.
Yeah, the team definitely has a lot of firepower behind it. If they have the communication, it's another story. I don't think that's. I mean,
That's a valid point. I have no idea about Steez's communication levels. I know his mechanics are very, very good, and they're major
How is
level.
RB as a
but
communicator?
RB's pretty poor.
RB's
What's
got
the
a lot of
settings he
meme macros.
Yeah.
He likes to chortle.
he improved this season.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
better. He did. And in the Super Bowl itself, like when the listen-ins were ongoing, at least it sounded like he was improving.
When RB's in like really competitive games, he can lock in and communicate pretty solidly. But he's definitely
He's not the main communicator, which
Yeah.
someone will have to
No.
step up. And
Is
I think
Young Sinatra a
will
primary?
be.
Sinatra's not a primary. No, I think that. But one of the better things about LeBron is that he's able to identify a weakness and then make it a strength. So his minor season in season 6, he was a good player. He was an awful communicator, and I told him like, look, you need to become a better communicator. Season 7, he took the lead, or season 8, going into season 8, when he was playing with I'm High, he became our best communicator in that offseason. So, to that point, just because RB or Sinatra haven't been a primary communicator doesn't mean that they can't. And I think in a situation where there's less communication going on, I think that Young Sinatra would easily be able to step up and fill that void.
I think if that team can get cohesion and figure out what roles they're in and play within them, that team is going to be one of the top in the East.
Yeah, RB's a fantastic mechanical player.
Yeah, I mean, top to bottom, that team mechanically is very, very strong.
Oh yeah, disgusting.
I think-
disgusting
yeah.
mechanically.
There's probably not going to be a better team mechanically unless LeBron and Grief somehow. Get
Yeah,
two studs.
I'd like to see who they file out, because I think LeBron and Grief, out of those 6 players, would be the top 2 technical players, I would say.
I agree, but it's a big question mark on who they fill out the rest of the roster with.
No, I agree. And going back to the communication with the ball teasers, I think that I'm High gets a lot of crap for not communicating a lot, but I've always said, I was on his team for 2 seasons, and he doesn't say a lot in terms of volume and the amount of things that he says, but when he says something, like, it's accurate and it's important. And so I think he communicates enough to be, a very good majors player. And so I don't think that'll necessarily be a downside of that team.
He communicates enough to not be a liability, but not enough to be a huge plus in terms of
Well,
communication.
He brings a myriad of other strengths, and so I think that
Oh,
at
for
the end
sure.
of the day, it's a net +9 as opposed to maybe a +10.
Oh, and we
Oh,
God.
Here's
No.
the Iblis.
Ibis with the
Changed
double
his name
I.
back.
Iblis.
The first-
Oh, it's the double I.
It's a double I. He wasn't able to get back his L.
Ibis.
So yeah, just call him Ibis for short.
Ibis World.
And I think this is our first real high-level Western player. I think he's going to go for a lot.
Spiller
bids
with
are
the
starting slow.
8-bid. Spiller
Okay.
loving this 8-bid power play. Curry answers with
He
the
goes
plus
to
2.
28.
I mean, you gotta think he gets to at least
He's weakening.
50,
That's a
right?
chink in the armor.
Yeah.
That's
Are these
that's
the only captains looking at him?
I mean,
Are we already down to 2 now?
Dalek and Yank have 2 defenders, and there's only 2 other center
It's
teams.
going to be one of the center teams.
Yeah,
It's
I
gonna
guess.
It's going to be Spiller or Curry, and it's probably going to get up around 50 to 60, if I had to guess.
See, that's the downside of coming out with your plus 8 bids, right? Because as soon as you start backing down, I mean, that's evidence of your like own mental weakness in terms of, oh, maybe I don't feel as strongly on this player. You know, if you're going to go plus 5, you got to maintain that. You know, keep it going. Show no chink in the armor.
Well, you got to think whoever doesn't walk away with Ibis here is going to walk away with Cripple later.
Potentially, I think there's
But
still a
Crippy-
lot of or Western captains to bid, though.
Crippy has a lot of server versatility. I think he played on an Origin team last season, so I wouldn't be surprised if Dodds
Yeah,
or...
but I don't think he played as well as he could have, and I think partly
He's also
as a
gonna be
consequence of
gone
by
a couple
virtue being on
weeks
Origin.
this season.
I think he's
He's
missing
much
3 to
more
5 weeks.
valuable. He's much more valuable to a Centra team, and so I think that Centra captains will understand this and bid more on him. Especially considering like there's 12 Centra starting spots. I mean, Crippy's got to be one of those.
Yeah, but Crippy, I think he's missing. As Ibis
50.
goes for exactly
Okay, so
50.
Curry brings it back. So he's got half of his team from last season.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, he's got the only players he could have.
That's a pretty amazing pick for essentially 45 tag coins and 5 keepers. My God.
Yeah, he went for exactly 50 last season too, and I feel like he had a pretty solid season.
Yeah,
Damn.
he was playing with Dodds. I think most people consider Dodds to be a pretty elite defender, so... Like, I don't know if he still has the reputation as like a huge force, or if he's just like the best of the defenders.
So we get some steals in the chat. Yeah, I feel like that could qualify as a steal.
I think because of the keepers, it's probably more on the steal side. I think if Spiller had gotten him for 50, it would have been slightly less of a steal, obviously.
I mean, I'll say it again. If you're bidding for 3 spots and you've got 100 tag coins to do it, like the top players should be going for, 60, 70 tag coins, because it's all about the value over that first minors player, right? You're not saying that when Mr. Hat goes for 41 and somebody else goes for 20, you're not saying Mr. Hat is twice as good as that player. You're saying that like the difference between Mr. Hat and like the first player not drafted is twice as much. And I don't think that's something that people really consider. And so in terms of Grief Seeds going for 100, yeah, he's like more than worth that price because of that fact. And again, if like Ibis on the West, if he is that number 1 defender there, 50's a real steal. Same thing as TPR going for less than 70 if that happens.
Oh,
Now
here we go.
back to
Crippy.
back.
Now Curry can get up to 55 on him.
We got a big bid coming up from Stan.
I think it's gonna be how high does Spiller get bid up for this pick.
Really, you think that's this guy?
I think if you're looking at a defender for Spiller, it's like
Well,
he's
I mean,
the number
Curry
1
will
list by far.
automatically
That's
go
all.
55, so that.
Yeah,
That would
I
be-
think so.
You could fill any player in for the rest of that team and put Crippy on
Oh
lower
my
D.
God, it would be. I mean, it would be destruction with those 2 on defense together.
Yeah, even if you put Crippy on O with Skinny, that's just as like scary.
Well, that's the strongest defensive pairing on Fresh Pink and Balair, who were, the best for
That's
a calendar year.
true.
Well, yeah, but he
Spiller is yet to get in on this.
He's
I mean,
missing- he's
is the
missing
minute
a few
restriction?
weeks.
He's
Oh,
missing
yeah,
200
No, that
minutes.
is true. Actually, that is a factor. Actually,
But you gotta think, he's not gonna miss the playoffs. He's gonna make most of the season.
yeah.
And I
Well,
So then your
Well,
question
well-
is, how good's your scouting? I mean, if these guys know really good minors players that can fill in, I don't think it's necessarily unheard of. K-Pow was gone for half the season, and I mean, look what
I mean,
happened there.
Doddsfall got suspended for 2 weeks last season, and he still made a huge impact on that team.
Yep.
God, why did the stall at 15? They're gonna go way higher.
It's just hard with people that
Is
are
it
missing.
going to go way higher? People actually really genuinely might be hesitant because of how much time he's going to miss. But if they let Curry get him for 19 coins, that would be.
Oh boy, it's happening.
I mean, just rough math,
Yeah.
right? If we say that Crippy's worth 70 half the season, I mean, I think that 30, 35 would be a really solid point. Because again, like 20 tag coins with the bids that are happening right now. I mean, if you can get two really like, I guess he'd have one left. One player.
Well, you'd have to get the guy in the snake draft,
for,
right?
80 or
You'd
two
have to
players
get
for that.
Fifth player in the snake draft, but
You'd have to have your guy.
I think for the last 3 seasons, only one Central team has made the playoffs. So if you're letting Golden Gate Warriors get Crippy here, you're kind of lowering your chances by a lot if you're a Central team, I think.
Yeah, 'cause it's half the season, but
I mean,
you
come
got-
playoff time, to have essentially the 3 best Central players, Skinny Chode, Ibis, and Crippy, in my mind, are the 3 single best players in Central. So if you let all 3 of those guys on the same team come playoffs, every team in the West needs to be shaking their head because that's a mistake on their part.
I think Curry's playing the slow play here. I think that instead of going out and throwing down 55, he's really wanting to be able to get somebody else. Assuming that Crippy's gone for part of the season, he wants to get somebody else to fill in instead of just that 0 tag coin player. But if push comes to shove, I don't know. I'd have a hard time seeing Crippy going somewhere else. I think that Curry's pretty set on this. So reaching that 35 tag coin point that I kind of pointed out, and so I don't know. Let's see if this goes that much higher.
I mean, the worst case scenario for Spiller is 55 because Curry can't outbid that.
At the same time, Curry's got to be thinking players that he wants beyond this, right? So he wants to make sure Spiller pays because he's going to be competing against Spiller for all the future players.
It's a very good point.
But there's only so many more like premier Central players. Oh, and it looks like this might stall out here, and it. Oh.
Oh.
Does
Okay,
not.
there we go.
I think Spiller thinks Curry only had 50. But he has 55.
55. Curry's had.
Oh,
Ooh,
no.
there it is.
Curry.
There it
Curry's
is.
going to force him to use up the whole 55 if he wants them.
Spiller. Spiller should just. Oh, there it is.
Oh, no, he's
Okay,
going to make
yeah.
him use up 56.
See, if
This
Spiller
is
was
this is
smart-
an
Goes to
interesting
56.
decision. Is Spiller going to go to 56? Or...
This is interesting.
Wait, no.
Why
Golden
is he
Gate.
waiting?
They can spend.
55.
Wait, is the 55?
Oh
That's
my
it.
goodness.
There
Wow.
it is.
Curry
So
just
That
brought
team
the
is-
3 best players in Central.
Jeez. I mean, you have to question Spiller. Like, you're willing to go 52 on him, but not 56.
No,
Spiller
no,
might
he-
just
I don't
know
think
his
he was
guys he
going.
wants.
I think he knew that Curry wanted him. I don't think he actually.
Was he just trying
expected
to-
get him for 54?
He was just trying to get Curry to get the rest of his money out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I mean,
Because now
this
Spiller
point-
only has one other Central team to bid with.
and at this point, if you're Curry, you're looking at 3 to 5 weeks of the season where it's Skinny, Ibis, and 2 like replacement level players.
But I mean, if we look at playoff teams of the past, right? I mean, you've got 2 dominant players and then 2 guys that maybe came up from minors or came from a position that they shouldn't have been the season before, and really make a big impact.
But at the
Like
same
that's
time,
kind
I
of the
think,
nucleus of what you want to build a team around.
I think Ibis going for 50 though kind of indicates that people might not consider him a dominant player anymore. But TPR is on the board now. We're gonna see some big numbers. If this is less than like the 70 to 75 range, it'll be very surprising to me.
Alright, quick plus minus. Did we say 80 before?
80. Yeah, I'm gonna call my shot and just say under. I think he's gonna go for
The
high
way the
70s.
draft's gone,
I'll
it
say-
seems that way, but
78.
we'll see.
78 for me.
Oh, the captains have
huge
realized. I
numbers.
think they've realized how few players there are left. TPR after
Power moves.
this, I think there's a relatively significant. Well, you've got Milksteak still out there, and so
I think Spiller's gonna go for milk steak.
I will say that Nick Ramyoga is currently in Dude Guy's channel.
You need support.
ooh, Base God's making a play. About such in
Holy
TPR.
You know, dude wants him. They've known each other for a while.
Yeah, there's no one in this draft that dude wants more than TPR.
Oh, there's my 74. Don't ruin it. Ah,
Yeah,
fuck.
78.
I was saying high
So-
70s, so let's see what this goes.
Of course.
Raven. I think Raven is surprisingly in
I
this fray.
didn't think this would boil down to Raven.
Well, how did Ravens' team get built last season, right? I mean, he spent a lot on his offense, and then he
Did he?
I mean, Wasatch and
Found kind of an
TPR,
undervalued defender to come up and play majors.
Wasatch and TPR would be like,
Excellent,
oh
excellent.
my.
There it is. TPR.
That
is
Busted,
surprising.
bro.
Wasatch TPR is going to be in the discussion for best offensive pair in the league, pretty obviously.
Who said 78?
I said 78.
Oh, close.
So I think that that's a good value for TPR, but Raven's got to know his two defenders that he wants to hold down base. If he knows those guys and is confident in them, that's a good price. But otherwise, I mean, he's got.
In theory, I know TPR has looked at playing defense. Is there any chance that TPR would
spending
transition to
I
defense?
don't think he's worth 77 on defense.
Look at the defenders left, right? Look at the defenders that are left in this draft, right? I mean, we still have like Jim, Turbo, Prism, like a lot of really solid players. And so in terms of which side TPR is more valuable as, like he might be as good as those players on defense, but there's no offenders as good as him that are available right now. And so
But Raven's not getting any of those aforementioned players for 23 coins. They're all going to go for more than that.
potentially, I mean, we'll see what the rest of this draft holds. I got Turbo for 7 tag points last season, and so just crazy things happen.
So with TPR going to the East, how much does Milk go for in the West? Like, somebody's going to have to, like, it's going to come down to 2 or 3 Origin teams that need another offense.
Dodgeball and Dude McGuy, I suspect.
I think Tro too. Like, Tro can't be going to this draft expecting himself to be the best offensive player on his team, can he? Like,
Diwas was just bit up.
No offense to Tro, but
I guess they're. So here's Diwas coming. Again, another one of these Western Conference really solid offenders. Or no, he has to be ranked in the Eastern. Yeah, I think he's moving halfway through the season.
Well, no, I think he's in Michigan now, so he's kind of a guy that straddles. He could play either Origin or for an East team as well.
Yeah, he already moved from California to Michigan.
yeah, and freaking
I thought
Sundown
he's
stole him
moving
from me
back,
last
though.
season.
I don't know. Diwas is kind of just like the old stalwart. Who,
He's kind of like
is always on the roster.
I think he's like a pretty like average MLTP offender in terms of like.
Average. You're saying like
experience.
top 10, right?
Yeah, he's probably in like for the West. He's probably in like the 8 to 12 area in terms of best offense.
I can dig it. All right. And it looks like Spiller.
Okay, that's all the way to Centra now.
Diwas thought he escaped. He wanted to be put on the Eastern big board.
The central players just know Diwas better than players from any other area, so they're more likely to bid on him.
And I feel like Diwas kind of has the angry ball temperament.
Angry.
He's a classic angry ball.
Angry ball, as in entirely not angry.
Okay then.
It's like okay then has no clue how long the draft has ever taken.
Game of Thrones is on. I'm sure that's why he's worried.
I mean, you should expect to miss Game of Thrones on draft day.
It's fucking draft day.
If you're getting drafted to majors, you pretty much have to accept that you're going to be watching Game of Thrones on tape delay the entire season.
Jeez. So many spoilers, though.
Yeah, right?
Oh, shit, and there you go.
Oh,
Diwas
wow.
for 35.
So is he in Michigan? Is he in California? What is?
Maybe he is moving back?
Probably. I think he's starting in Michigan, but he might be a little both, as far as I know. But
I mean, a lot of their games are going to be on Sphere, so regardless
Mhm.
of the location, he should be fine for the Sphere games. But
So this will be really interesting for how his schedule lays out this season, right? Because, if they've got, let's say that hypothetically they're playing a bunch of Origin teams to start the season, that'd be one thing, but maybe they play, Chalksy's team in the first half. And so
here comes Milk. I also want to point out that I called Diwas an average player and he went for 35. Just saying.
that's slightly above average.
Doxy is definitely going to go on Milk, because I think Mr. Gon really values his former teammates.
Yeah, it's going to come
Oh
down,
wow,
I think.
66
Holy
with
shit, did Nick
dude there.
disappear?
It's going to be Chalksy and Dude and
Nick's down
Dodds.
there. Oh boy.
What did Milksteak, did he play this last season or no?
He got picked
He
up.
was a free agent.
Halfway through by
He got picked up to a
Ballstars.
Central team and then got traded to Ball Stars team.
Okay.
In a pretty
Oh, and
Bad
Fatal's
trade.
making a rare appearance.
I kind of forgot that Fatal and Doddsfall were in this draft. They just kind of do much.
They've been sitting back, yeah.
There's always a couple teams
Fatal.
like
I
that.
mean, is he gonna be? How's he gonna find a defense for 24 coins?
You can find plenty good defense for 24 coins.
And so looking at the draft packet, if you're looking at the 10th best defender left, I mean, you're talking about guys like, C. Bivy, Death Pickle, like Break, like OJ Dude. These guys who have played majors and like high-level minors before.
Fatal putting 80 on Milk.
So maybe Milk's going to do the 80 over 80 and a half that TPR didn't. And he hits it. It's Milk, not TPR, that hits the 80 and a half mark.
And that's what we're talking about. Dodds and Fatal sitting in the back. Now they're going huge on Milk.
So bidding up Milksteak higher than Fatal, or bidding higher than TPR, is this the captains saying that they think this season off is going to be a significant downside? Or is this partly captains realizing that Milksteak is potentially the only dominant offender left as he goes for 82 in the central, kind of area of the U.S.?
See, I think you can put together a fine defense for 18, especially at the end of the draft when everyone's just kind of taking their guys.
I think the value above replacement at this point with TPR going to the East for Milk was just huge. Like, if you look at Milk compared to the next best available offensive player, like the gap was going to be ginormous.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Now you're going to have two of the best holders in the entire league on the same team.
That team is so scary.
No, the Western Big Board's not updating.
I don't see how that team can miss the playoffs, to be honest.
Okay, now we're up to
only one player.
Intercest here, JJ's guy.
Oh my.
Is this?
That's. I think my call was 60. I want to say. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes over 60 here. So 60 and a half. I'll take the over.
Raven with the classic Raven strats, telling
I'll
other people
say-
to bid someone up.
That's probably the most frustrating thing.
I'll say
Raven always
62.
does that.
23 now.
62 is my guess here.
Oh, we're already up to.
And we're already up to 50.
Oh, the
Big
power play, the 8.
So a 45-point bid from,
It might be 62 after
and it
keepers,
wasn't
though.
enough.
I think the 8-point bid is one. Oh no, it did not work out. Though last time it was made, it was mainly just to bid up the price of somebody. So maybe JJ Poole doesn't like Intercest, feels that somebody else is available. It's kind of
I definitely think JJ wants him back.
Gotta think though, if you valued him as a 60 or so coin majors player, why wasn't he playing in majors at the end?
Because JJ loves his minors team to be as good as they were.
Ooh,
JJ,
wow. And there goes
like-
the Probots. They're no longer in.
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, I get where he's coming from with that, but as an MLTP captain, I mean, your job's to look out for your majors team, right? And you want your minors team to succeed as well, but that's part of the whole thing is that, people want to be able to move up from minors to majors. And if you have a dominant minors team but are unwilling to move those players up, I mean, that's holding back the league.
I mean, I personally agree with you. I just think JJ came from, the tutelage of Sanuku, who was very, concerned with his minors team. So he just kind of has that, sense of pride in his minors winning games.
I don't know. I just feel like if you think he was better than the players you had, then
he was better than Deadman.
Unnamed players or named
at the
players. I
last
mean, we
season.
can go there. I'm more than willing to get down into the dirt.
I mean, Deadman's a great player, but his ping just wasn't there last season for whatever reason. It's just he wasn't fitting well. Intercest on most teams would have been starting out.
See, out of those, I think I would probably go with Deadman and Intercest, in all honesty. I know that JJ really likes Risk, but, I mean, communication is really important to me. But
Oh,
so here goes Ball Don't Lie.
Here. Nice.
Possibly the highest rated Eastern offender left.
I mean, I really felt like he was one of the most improved players in the league last season. I think a lot of people overlooked how much he developed as a player and the fact that he was able to help guide that team with a lot of interesting personalities all the way to the East Finals. So I'll be curious to see what he goes for.
And this is the second to last player that will be nominated in the first round, and there'll be a little break. I would assume we still are.
Is it
we'll have to
after
see.
16 picks?
Yeah, there's supposed to be a half-hour intermission.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But was it 16 picks, or was it when all the teams had 2-player or a second player or a first player?
No, I think it's 16 picks.
It's always been 16 picks, for the last few.
So talking with
auctions.
Sidewalk before this draft, I know that he and I kind of disagreed from a strategy. Sidewalk was very adamant in terms of paying a lot for who he felt were the best offenders. Whereas, I think that, a lot of defenders are going to go for relatively cheap. And so getting a dominant player, would have been less expensive than getting a dominant offender. But, Sidewalk really wants to get a really solid offense here. And if he has ball don't lie, rated similarly to where Intercest is, I could easily see this going up into the 50s. Looks like it's slowing down
they're
now.
making a bid as well. They're jumping back into the mix. Private major.
Ball don't lie's been hanging around Legman a lot. I think
their personalities mesh well.
I think everyone in these kind of already has like a number one like aggressive offender for the most part. Okay, then maybe.
I would call out Origin Ducks. I know that OK Then's a really solid player. His team made the playoffs this last season. In terms of somebody that I would qualify as like a very like aggressive, high grab, like an offender that can carry a team from top to bottom, I don't know that I would include him in that category. And so I think the Origin Ducks might have a little.
I think there's still a few guys left that he might be able to get that would fill that role.
Dude, McGuy. That'll be a nice chill team.
That will be a chill team.
That's a team I could have a beer with. A big part of this.
I think they'll fit in together, to be honest. Oh, here's Frange.
Yeah, Muppet is
Frange.
Making a kind of a strange name change, but
interesting nomination.
That is a very strange name change. Oh, and there's Raven outbidding LeBron. So,
I mean, Frange is very skilled mechanically, and we've seen people be able to make that transition positionally.
I think he's going to go for 1 year.
Oh shit!
Oh.
Dodds cannot let that happen.
See, this is where if you don't know how much you're willing to pay on Frange, you can easily get sucked up into a bid war that could go up to 10, 12 tag coins on a position he's never played before.
The thing about Frange is if you get him, then you have to draft Jam.
I don't know. Yeah, that is 100% accurate. They are two peas in a pod.
Practically the same player,
I wonder if that
honestly.
was part of the tactics of making that name change to lower your value in the auction drafts. Just make it as unappealing as possible.
In MLTP Season 20, every player will have an assigned name that is unchangeable and that clearly designates your ability to play, so that there can be no confusion.
It'll actually just be your social security number.
I mean, look at Lavender's Rock or whatever Swingen changed his name to temporarily. But now it's Wanker, which is just as great.
Oh, Big Swingin' signed up?
Yeah.
Don't you mean JJ's pool?
With no mic.
Which is, honestly, it might be an improvement.
No, he's actually a really good communicator, to be honest.
Yeah, Swingin' gets a lot of shit. But Swingin' is, if he signed up, I would have Swingin' rated as like the number one offender in the East.
Skill-wise, sure. I would never draft him with a 10-foot pole. I had the misfortune of playing with him in the LTP. I would never consider drafting him. I consider him cancerous and detrimental to the success of any team when things start going wrong. His personality is extremely,
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about Frange.
So as I said, they can kind of creep up into the 12, 15 range. I don't know that. I don't know that LeBron
is very talented. Frange is very, very talented.
But he's switching to a completely new position, right? I mean, not every player in the league is. Not every player in the league is a future Hall of Famer or a current Hall of Famer. Like, I mean, I think that everybody's pointing out the exception and ignoring a rule across the board. You can't just switch a position.
Is it a rule? I think good tag pro players are good tag pro players.
Getting Frange as his D.
I don't think Frange going for 16.
That's a little interesting for a primary defender.
Now he's got 2 coins, so you got to think he's intending Frange or I guess Milksteak to be his top defender.
Or just assume that Fatal and Milk on offense is just unstoppable.
Which is not far from the truth.
Are we taking
But I think it's probably going to be less than 30 minutes, but there's probably going to be a break. And I think just another note on Frange is his value as a player doesn't really come from his technical ability, whether he's on O or D. Like, he's not a bad technical player, but his leadership and communication and positioning are his strong points.
In the words of Troball describing Dude McGuy going into Season 8, I think that, Frange is a real glue guy, right? He's a guy you want to draft to, solidify your team together, in spite of the fact that, maybe for portions, Ghost Boosters might have been the least stable team, but no.
Yeah. And especially on a team with Fatal and Milk, who are both known for barely ever talking, so having a guy like that will be useful.
I don't know that I would pay 16 for Frange on defense. But, Fatal and Milk, like I said, if you're a better player as a captain, I think you can make some riskier picks and it can still pay off for you. And so I think that'll be a really interesting team to watch.
And I imagine Fatal's probably had some tryouts with Frange and gotten to get a glance and get some informed opinion on how Franz actually copes as a defender, as
Sure.
opposed to just sort of speculating based on our own perception of seeing him as an offensive player.
He did sign up as D/O, so I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up playing offense this season, at least a little bit.
But will the CRC let him play offense?
If you sign up as D/O, also Franz lives in Maine and he's playing in the West. I just wanna.
Well, that's actually a really good point. That's actually a very good point.
To be the primary defender, I don't know.
Yeah, do you trust Franz to be a primary defender? Yeah.
I don't think he should be, but who knows? There might be an aggressive defender that's left at the end of the draft that Fatal has that no one else knows about.
So who are some big names who have yet to go? One jumps off the bat is Turbo.
Turbo
following
and
another
Jim.
amazing season.
Turbo, Jim, and Fat, right?
Yeah, that's like the big three left on defense for the East. And Slide, I guess you can throw in there.
And I think I think we had RB rated above Fat. But other than that, I mean, that's 3 of the top 4 Eastern offenders that are defenders. Oh, not counting Grief, I guess. So that's 3 of the top 5 Eastern defenders, and they still haven't gone. And so it'll be really interesting to see where they go.
I would say the best is going to go for a lot.
Yeah, I would say the best player yet to go would be Grant, who I assume at this one would be probably ending up on tiers. But that's just
I think that's a Throwball pick.
That's a classic Throwball pick.
I can't play anywhere else.
And I think, each season I drafted a defender that I never played with because I was, willing to kind of sit and wait and find somebody that, everybody kind of undervalued. And I think that honestly that might end up happening to somebody like Jim or, Turbo or Fat where, Turbo wouldn't call himself an asshole. He's just kind of old and doesn't want to put up with shit. I'm coming from a similar mindset. And so some people might just say, okay, he's not really friendly. I don't really know him that well. I don't want to draft him. Same thing with Jim. Maybe people are afraid of that if they haven't, dealt with her before. And then, Fat's got the European thing. So each one of them has like one of those things that a captain might zero in on. And instead of bidding them up, they might say, I want Abe Lincoln or I want C-Bivy, right? And so I think it wouldn't necessarily be surprising to see one of those 3 players go for less than 20. I wouldn't be able to say which one it is, but if all these captains start filling up their rosters and those guys are left on the board, it might end up happening.
Yeah, no, it's entirely possible. I know. I think Legman works well with Jem, and I think Legman does. Personality-wise, him and Jem get along very, very well. So in theory, I could see Private Major going pretty hard for Jem.
So hypothetically, in a situation where Legman plays offense, right? I mean, so let's say Legman's got his minors guy he wants to call up that he can play with for like 5 tag coins. So, I mean, hypothetically, they get maybe 2 of these, though I don't know which 2 would work together. Maybe you get Jim and Fat together again, reunite that defense if they want to work together.
Yeah.
Maybe, Turbo would definitely rather play on a radius team. His ping's much more consistent up there, but maybe Turbo and Fat, right? Like that would be, extremely strong combination. And hypothetically, the Holy Rollers could easily get them for 100 tag coins.
Oh,
that would be a very solid.
And then you add Legman and whoever he feels comfortable kind of playing offense with, that would be a potentially dominant team.
I'm guessing that, I don't remember the Holy Rollers really bidding anybody up. And so I guess their, prospects are still on the board and he's sitting there with, a case full of dry powder. So
Ball don't lie. They were in on the Ball don't lie bidding.
That's true. That's true.
Mr. Hat.
But beyond those 2, yeah, they haven't. I don't call them really bidding at all.
CB at the beginning. I don't know.
So that'll definitely be the one to watch. I think we all pin Grant to go to Troball. But what about Dodsfall? Who's Dodds targeting in this draft? Or Choxy? Dodds and Choxy still have 100 tag coins left. So I mean, who are some players in the West that could maybe go? Is Nick still here?
Oh yeah, I think. Well, at least this is Sintra, but Ukilum is someone that's still on the board. That I mean, his availability isn't great, but I think he is just kind of the same thing as D-Wiz, where just an absolute great player to play with and makes his team better. I mean, he played with pretty much every level that he's played the game. He's had the same impact, and like when he played with Curry, they had an absolutely fantastic season. And I just think Ukilum is a very, very good team player, and that'll be interesting to see which captain really wants him.
Shout out Season 6 KG Ballers, Ukilum. There you go.
Ballstar is also still on the board. I mean, he captained last season. Now he's back in the draft. He's kind of just a steady Eddie guy. He can play either position. He's not necessarily going to destroy the league by any stretch, but he's a very, very solid majors player.
And then,
his Eastern big board ended up, being pretty far down. Like at the end of the day, looking at it, it felt, a little bit out of place. But I think you saw kind of across the board, if people had a bad season, then on average they kind of dropped like around 30 points or so. But how much do you think captains are going to weigh this last season's, play? Because I mean, like, look who was all on that team, right? I mean, it's Ballstar, it's D-Wiz. I can't remember who was on the defense there.
Luke Moo was one of the defenders.
Well, sure. Like, these are all guys that people say, like, these are good majors players, but that team played so poorly last season. And so, it'll be interesting to see how those guys kind of shake out. We saw D-Wiz go for the average amount, like Neb said. So do we see Luke and Ballstar going for similar values, or what?
Is Luke in the draft?
Yes.
Yeah, Luke signed up.
Okay, I don't see him on the big board.
He's on the Eastern Conference big board.
He's on the Eastern big board?
Yeah, he does not. He actually does not want to be drafted to the West. He's from Nebraska, but Origin and Sphere are both very unstable for him, and Radius is kind of his preference.
Okay.
So right now on the East, we have him ranked. It goes in terms of defenders left. We have Turbo, and then Jim, and then Fat, and then Slide, and then Luke Moo. And so, do we think that's relatively fair, or sure, maybe up above Slide? I guess you could throw him in with, if you consider him one of these, really top defenders. Again, you've got Turbo, Jim, Fat, and Luke Moo still left to draft, and so
yeah, absolutely.
The teams that have that top tier.
Stalin has not been nominated yet. He's listed as both positions, so he has that flexibility, and I think he is a pretty competent defender if he chooses that route. I'll be interested to see where Stalin goes.
One thing I wanted to bring up was that I don't believe Holy Rollers made a single bid in the first 16, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, they did. They made
no.
Hypothetically?
See, I feel like Legman, last time he was going to draft, or last time he had a draft, he ended up just taking like the most predictable players that he like hung around with. So I feel like we're just going to see Legman, Stalin, and Gem almost guaranteed.
So we're talking about the season 8, 30 seconds to Mars Ball. Was that? Yeah, that was season 8. Season 8, 30 seconds to Mars Ball, who had arguably like one of the best offenses in the Eastern Conference. Maybe their defense was a little bit on the shaky side. I mean, I think statistically you can make that argument. I know that was kind of one of the first seasons I really started digging in, and that team offensively was really solid. And so maybe Leg has Stalin picked, and then maybe you replace some of that defense with like a Turbo or a Jim or somebody that's played at that level. That'd be a really solid sharp team.
I mean, I think most people would say that Legman and anyone's going to be a top offense.
Sure, that's the benefit of being the best player in the game right now.
One pair that'll be interesting to see who they go to, since both Dodds and Choxy haven't bid yet, but the Ball God and Not Prey, either as a combo or as individuals, especially for Choxy, who's going to be an Origin team, but playing more Sphere than any other team in all likelihood, and Ball God and Not Prey on their home server, especially with prior experience together. I personally thought Ball God was going to be All Tiger's partner going into this season, but he ended up going with the D-Wiz pick. But I think Ball God and Not Prey will bring out the bids from both Ball Comedies and Chase Jam.
And I know earlier that I, talking about Sphere and the difficulties there, that I said that, there's been a relative dearth of offense. To give them credit, like Ball God and Not Prey very well might be those guys. Again, from an evaluation standpoint, I'm way past that point. I don't know half the players that play in minors. Ball God and Not Prey, Not Play played significant minutes in majors for Holden Gate. They're very, very good minutes in that semifinal game. And then Ball God, was a part of one of the most dominant minors minors teams, in league history. And so, those are two guys on a Texas team like Ball Comedies. Hypothetically, you see Mr. Gunn and Ball God together on the same team, which, sign me up for that. But, that could be a very incredibly dominant offense.
That and another player that's interesting is BDL. I mean, I would have thought that, Curry kind of ended up getting the dream of Iblis and Crippy, but
Kobe Star Bryant.
Oh, okay, Kobe Star Bryant.
Kobe Star Bryant.
I personally thought he would go to Holden Gate Warriors before the season started, but now we'll see who goes in on him.
I don't know. I think we can get that Kobe Star Bryant, Kurt Star Rambis connection. Yeah, solid, especially with that D anchoring them.
How much
Although
did
they do
Matrix
have
go
0
for last
points.
season?
I don't think BDL had a great season last season. I forgot he's not going for 0. I don't think.
But then again, one conference might, like, I asked this, how much did Matrix go for last season? Because that's the, last example of kind of a dominant offender going from one coast to the other, and kind of the results of, where captains kind of value him. Does anybody remember off the top of their heads? I don't know that I've got the stats from last season's draft to look up how much Matrix went for.
I think he went for like 60.
Either 55 or 60, I'm
He's
sure.
definitely over 50.
Okay, so do we see a Western team that'd be willing to spend, maybe Dodds? That might be something. Chase Jam if he felt that BDL could play on Origin.
Well,
Ball
BDL was
communities.
originally a Centra player. I mean, so he's had probably more experience with all the Centra players than all of the Eastern players. So they're very aware of how good he is, and he was one of the old kind of pug and rank plug players that was just destroying. So I think pretty much everyone in the Western Conference is aware of just how good he is.
No, thank you for that. That's definitely a big difference. I wasn't aware of that.
The main issue I think with BDL is that he's gonna have half the season on the East Coast and half the season on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So no one team is really gonna want to spend a whole lot on him, even though he had a pretty good season last season.
Alright, it looks like everyone's just checking in. And we're gonna get the next nomination up.
Is I still on Rumble right now?
I wouldn't be. I would be sitting home cracking a beer and just be, fucking happy about how my draft went. Because obviously, he bid those players up early. Like, this was his team. Speaking back to Dino's point, he had a team in mind, and I think he went out and got it. And so, if that's really the case, he's on fucking cloud 9 right now.
Hey,
How's it going?
things are good.
Nice pick. I would have done
I-
the same thing myself.
I pulled the Dino special.
He did pull the Dino special.
What'd you guys think?
Did you have
We
100
were
typed
discussing-
in before the nomination came?
Did I what?
Did you have the 100 typed in before the nomination came?
Oh yeah,
expecting it to be
I
Grief?
was ready, and I fully expected Raven to nominate Grief.
Did
Well,
you know
so what we were-
anyone else that was gonna go for 100?
I knew High wanted him really, really badly, so I wanted to make sure I got him.
So we were talking beforehand, and going back to season 8, where Dino obviously was bid up by Jim, ended up spending 100, and kind of talking about how going into this draft, most people said, "Oh, Grief's gonna go for 100." I made the point that I don't think that it was necessarily Grief going for 100 that made that, but it's the fact that you had arguably the number 1, number 2, offender on the other side to pair with him, and that it was that made that team so successful. So flash forward 5 seconds or 10 seconds or however many, you bid up Grief seats to 100, and so I think we were all pretty on board with that. Hypothetically going into this, your defense, the defender you want to play with Grief, and your partner that you want to play with him, and so you went out there and made the pick, and so if those guys accurately, I think we all think that's going to be a very successful team.
Yeah, I came to the realization this week. We were just like messing around, pugging with Grief. Just happened to be there, and he's by far the best player in Tag Pro. And getting him for 100 is just a steal.
The steal.
It is, and
Yeah.
you'll see why.
Hashtag steal in the chat. Well, I think we all saw why a couple season 7 for the beginning of season 8.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
But,
I think ping this season, like everyone is saying, oh, Grief's regressed and all that kind of stuff, but it's really like it's frustrating to see something outside of the actual game take away from a player. And I know that, like, talking with Grief after those first 3 weeks, it was I felt really bad for him because it was something completely outside of